In this video, we'll be doing lesson 5-1 part 2, where we're looking at ordering rational numbers. So we're going to be comparing numbers and fractions and putting them in order from least to greatest. So, to start, we're going to have to be paying attention to our denominators, and we're going to have to find the least common denominator between multiple fractions in order to compare them. So the least common denominator is, wrong thing. The least common multiple of the denominators of two or more fractions. Okay, so the least common denominator is going to be the least common multiple between fraction denominators. You have to have at least two, obviously, that you're comparing, or more. Okay, since we are building off of a previous time doing these notes, now we're going to flip to the back page, and we're going to look at these. So it says order -3/7, -1, 1/4, and 2/3 from least to greatest. First thing we can do is we know that all negative numbers are less than all positive numbers, right? So -3 and -1 from this list are going to obviously be smaller than 1/4 and 2/3. So now we can just compare -3/7 to -1 and then 1/4 to 2/3 in order to figure out what the order is going to be. So if we have -1 and we want to put it over 7 so that we can compare it to -3/7, we can really think of -1 as being -1/1, right? And if I have -1/1 and I times the top and bottom both by 7, then I'm going to end up with -7/7, right? So if we think about that, we're comparing -3/7 and -7/7. With negative numbers, the bigger it is, the smaller it is, right? So like the bigger the number, the smaller the actual amount, because negative numbers, as they get bigger, get farther and farther away from 0. So -7/7 is actually smaller than -3/7. So we're going to put our symbol that direction, right? To indicate that -7/7 is smaller than -3/7. Okay. So the least common multiple between 1 and 7 is 7, right? So we used 7 as the denominator. Okay. Now we're going to compare 1/4 and 2/3 to having that 7/7 and -3/7. But we're going to compare 1/4 and we're going to compare 2/3. So the least common multiple between 7, 4, and 3, because we're comparing all of them, is going to be 84. So we're going to use 84 as the denominator. So if I have 1/4, what do I need to times it by to get 84 on the bottom? So something over here, 4 times something is going to give me 84. 21. So we're going to put 21 on top and bottom. So 1 times 21 is going to give me 21, and 4 times 21 is going to give me 84. Then again, we need to have 3 times something to get to 84. Top and bottom are going to multiply by 28, and that's going to give us 56/84. So now when we look at this, we can tell that 21/84 is smaller than 56/84, and so that helps us figure out our fractions. The key thing to note in answer, write as original numbers. So in your answer, you can't use these bigger fractions that you made. You have to use the originals. So instead of writing 21/84 in that place, you would have to write 1/4 in your final answer. So -7 was smaller than -3/7 is what we said, right? So that means that -1 is smaller than -3/7 because this was really -1, right? And then we know that -3/7 is smaller than 1/4 because -3/7 is negative and 1/4 is positive. And then 1/4 we said was 21/48, and 2/3 was 84. So when we have our 1/4 and our 2/3 comparison, the 1/4 is going to be smaller. So in our original answer, we wrote them as 1, -3/7, 1/4, and 2/3. You can write them with the symbols like that, or you can just write a list, -1, -3/7, 1/4, 2/3, because we're making our list from least to greatest. But we're using the original fractions. Even though we did math to figure out and compare them, we go back to the original fractions for the final answer. Okay, so let's move down to some quick checks. So I'll do this first one with you. Compare the fractions in each pair. So we have 6/7 and 4/5. So the easiest thing to do is going to be to times the top and bottom of this one by 7, top and bottom of this one by 5, because then on the bottom you have 5 times 7 and 5 times 7. So both of these fractions end up over 35. 5 times 6 is 30. 4 times 7 is 28. So which fraction is bigger? 30/35, which means that 6/7 is bigger. So we put the bigger side of our greater than symbol on the 6/7 and the smaller side on the 4/5. Okay, so to show your work on these, show what you're multiplying by, what you got, and then your symbol between them. So we'll go ahead and pause the video and you can do B and C on your own, and then we'll go over them. All right, so hopefully what you did for B, times the top and bottom on this side by 3, top and bottom on this side by 4. So 4 times 2 is 8/12. 3 times 3 is 9/12, which means that our symbol should go this direction, where the small side is towards the 8/12 and the big side is towards the 9/12. Then for this one, we can times top and bottom by 4, top and bottom by 10, right? So on this side, we're going to have -30/40, and on this side, we're going to have -28/40. Remembering with negative numbers that if it's a bigger one, it's smaller because it's farther away from 0. So our symbol should go this way because -30/40 is smaller. So -3/4 is smaller than -7/10. Okay, so sometimes you're going to be comparing just two fractions with a symbol like that, showing your work by saying what you multiplied by, what you got, and then the symbol to show your answer. Some of the time you're going to have multiple fractions. So we have 2/3, 1/6, and 5/12. So if I take 3, 6, and 12, what's a common denominator between 3, 6, and 12 that we can turn all of them into? We can make all of them have a denominator of 12, right? So 2/3 times 4 on top and bottom would give us 8/12. 1/6 times 2 on top and bottom would give us 2/12. And then we already have 5/12. So now we need to compare, remembering that in our answer we have to use 5/12, 2/3, and 1/6. We can't use all of the 12s in our answer. So which one of these is the smallest? 2 12s, 8 12s, or 5 12s? 2 12s, right? So the first fraction we write for our actual answer is going to be 1/6 because the 2/12 came from that 1/6. Then we're comparing 5/12 and 8/12. The next smallest one is going to be 5/12. And then our last one, the 8/12 is the biggest, so we write it as 2/3, because that is what we got 8 over 12 from. Okay, so then our final answer would be 1/6, 5/12, 2/3, because those were the original fractions, but now we've written them from smallest, middle, biggest. Okay, so to show your work for that, showing what you multiplied by, what you got, and then your final answer. So go ahead and pause the video, and you can do B on your own. Okay, so looking at this, we have a denominator of 10, 5, 2, and 12. Okay, if you made trees and you figured out your least common multiple would be 60. So you're going to use 60 as your least common denominator. So turning 3 over 10 into 60, I'm going to times the top and bottom by 6, and I'm going to get 18 over 60. 1 over 5 times 12 times 12 is going to give me 12 over 60. 1/2 times 30 times 30 is going to give me 30 over 60. And 7 over 12 times 5 times 5 is going to give me 35 over 60. So now I have all of my fractions with the same denominator, remembering again that I have to write them in this form in the answer, but I'm going to start with the smallest one. So the smallest one in this list is going to be 12 over 60, which is really 1 over 5. The next smallest in this list is going to be 18 over 60, which is really 3 over 10. The next smallest in this list is going to be 30 over 60, which is really 1/2. And then the last one, the biggest one, is going to be 35 over 60, which is really 7 over 12. So this is how I would write my final answer. Again, if you're struggling with figuring out what the least common denominator would be, like what you should put them all over, you can go back to that least common multiple that we did on a previous lesson. So like if we made trees for this, 10 is 2 and 5, 5 is just 5, 2 is just 2, 12 is 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So if we wrote this out, we would have 10 equals 2 times 5, 5 equals 5, 2 equals 2, 12 equals 2 to the second times 3. So my least common multiple, I would bring down 2 to the 2, because I need to represent the 2's, a 3, and a 5. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, times 5 is 60. So the least common multiple is 60. So then that's, between all of these numbers, that's what you're going to want to use as the denominator. You don't have to show your work for this unless you need to do it to figure out what your least common denominator would be. Some of them, like this first one, right, where it was 3, 6, and 12, you could kind of just tell by looking at it. But if you're struggling with that, remember least common multiple from previous set of notes on this page is how you would figure that out. All right, that wraps up part 2 of lesson 5-1.